rise. The Steve Storytime Sanctum Writing Court is now in session. The Honorable Stephen M. Chaos presiding.
You may be seated or remain standing, whichever you prefer. As you can tell, I give myself permission to change that role as I see fit. As it turns out, picking and choosing the rules that I follow while I'm writing is kind of the reason we're here today. Welcome to Steve's Storytime Writing Court. I am the judge, the jury, the prosecution, the bailiff, and whatever else I feel like doing. We joke that speed limits are merely suggestions. Have fun selling that stance to a judge. In writing, our judges are those who decide whether or not they want to spend their hard-earned money on your stories. Whether you got your start in a creative writing class or a writer support group, you've no doubt heard about all the writing rules that you must follow. But when it comes down to the actual writing, are we following writing rules, personal preferences, suggestions, or what? Let's start out with the basics of writing. Make sure your spelling and grammar is correct. Duh. Make sure you follow the sentence structure rules that you should have learned in school. Duh. Follow the punctuation rules of your chosen language. Oh, almost forgot. Duh. And it might benefit you if English is the language you're using to learn the Oxford comma. Not saying you have to follow it, but learn what it is. You're going to hear about it eventually anyway. Verdict and all that, those are rules. Your judges, your new potential readers, will rarely judge your story favorably if it's too disorganized or makes no grammatical sense. Tighten up those rules, folks. Oh, here's a good one. For those of you who self-publish, make sure your manuscript is formatted in the way the publishing company's technology specifies. Personally, I do not enjoy spending all that time making sure my manuscript is formatted properly. But I've never had a manuscript choke during the automated process. Verdict. This is a suggestion, a strongly worded suggestion. And you may turn it into your own special rule after the automated process has rejected your manuscripts more than once. Notice that in all of this, I never said yay or nay to outlining your story all the way through before you even start writing it. Also notice I never said yay or nay to the stream of consciousness approach, or what some people would call the seat of your pants approach, where you just start writing, and figure out the story structure and the continuity some other time. I've already ruled that those are personal preferences of the writer. You'll come up with the style you want to use, whether it's based on something I said, whether it's based on all kinds of things I've said. Maybe it's based on something you've heard from another writer that I didn't mention. Maybe it's something that you thought up all by yourself. You'll come up with whatever it is by actually writing. This will make it your writing preference. Also notice I didn't mention a specific writing time of the day to write. You will hear from many authors who have a writing schedule that they follow perfectly. Many of them will tell you exactly why it works for them. Some will recommend that you do the same thing. Set up a rigid writing schedule for yourself. as if doing so is mandatory law. Overruled. If the writing schedule works for them, fantastic. If it works for you, fantastic. It did not work for me. Writing schedules are a personal preference. You need to figure out yours all by yourself. I'm going to read to you my personal writing schedule as quoted by the Book of Steve. I write whenever I want. I write whenever I don't want. That may not make sense now, but it will. I write while I'm eating. Not during family meals. That's disrespectful. I write when I'm asleep. No fooling. Some of my wackiest ideas come from when I'm dreaming. That's why I keep a notebook on my nightstand. I write when I'm in motion. Now, you shouldn't physically write while you're driving. You are never going to win that argument with a police officer. That's why I carry a digital recorder with me at all times. You never know when those ideas will show up. I write when I'm happy. Of course, that makes sense. But I also write when I'm unhappy. You know, such things like when I'm borderline pissed at something or somebody, or I'm at work and I'm expected to do work that I'm paid for instead of writing. Very unhappy times. Oh, and speaking of unhappy, I was quite bummed when I found out my digital recorder wasn't waterproof, and I actually had to get out of the shower and dry off to jot down some of my ideas. To reiterate, your writing schedule will be something you figure out on your own. That's a reality. Next issue, if you truly connect to this writing world, you're going to be tempted to come up with all kinds of weird rules to make things fit for you and how you want to write. Should you allow yourself to give into that temptation? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how else is your story going to sound any different from anyone else's if you're using the same rules and techniques that everybody else does? At one point in the recent past, I decided I wanted to write a lot of flash fiction. The reasons for that, I may tell in another video. Some of the stories I was coming up with were pretty cool, but the more I kept them under the 1,000-word mark, the less it was the story that I wanted to tell, and I felt constrained. The story sounded forced. I decided, all right, it's about time I follow my own rule. Story tells me how long it's going to be. So I got rid of the 1,000-word limit and let the story expand the way I thought it should. And a couple of those got published and sold, so mission accomplished. The story will tell me what genre it's going to be in. And very much related to that genre rule, the story will tell me in which medium I will tell it. I had, a number of years ago, what I thought was a fantastic time travel / alternate reality story. And I even came up with the soundtrack for it. And I had sound file after sound file that I transcribed, and I finally put together the order of events. And then when it came time to sit down and write the story, I looked at what I had and said, yeah, this part isn't necessary. This part doesn't really make any sense. This part is filler. This part, I don't even know what the hell I was thinking. And by the time I finished, I barely had enough material for a short story. And even then, it didn't make any sense. And then one of the songs from my soundtrack popped into my mind. Song lyrics. I will record the song eventually. My playing skills need to catch up to my ambition. But other than that, those lyrics still exist. that story will be told one way or another. Oh, forgot to mention this from earlier. I do very much use the Oxford comma in my writings. You should at least learn what it is. That's your homework assignment. No, I'm not going to grade it. Do it anyway. Disclaimer. In any of my videos, including this one, I am not teaching you how to write. I'm merely giving you suggestions based on how I write. I have absolutely no doubt I will come up with more writing tips and suggestions and hints farther down the line. Or if you have a question about writing almost anything at all, feel free to leave a message in the comments section and I may turn it into a video one of these days. Until then, court is adjourned. Because you shouldn't drink in court.